Chairman of the Woodbridge Housing Commission. I call the meeting to order on this 20th day of April, 2026. This cold 20th day of April, 2026. And we don't have a flag, so we really can't. Oh, yes, we do. We should open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
I haven't done that since third grade.
Yes, well,
Really?
Okay, just about.
Okay.
We do it Boy Scouts all the time.
yes.
I
Pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And the Vice Chair and Secretary, Mary, would you call the roll? Or,
I just usually just write it down, but I'm happy to call the roll.
okay, well,
Mary Dean, Elaine Falcon, David Lover,
here
Louis Schaefer, not here,
is absent.
David Swanson, Dominic Thomas, guests, Kathy Hunter, and Amy Morella.
One she goes. All right, thank you very much. It doesn't appear that there was any public here for public comment. But I will state that if through the course of the meeting some members of the public show up, we can allow them at some later point in the meeting to comment if they wish. Comments from the chair. The one comment I want to make, two things.
Forgive me, we haven't actually approved the March minutes.
The minutes, I'm sorry. You all were given a copy of the March minutes. If you've had a chance to review them, is there a motion to approve the March minutes?
I make a motion.
And made and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. All those, anybody opposed? No? So the minutes are approved. The minutes for the March 16th, 2026 meeting are approved. On the comments for the chair is, and I've thought quite a bit about it. Since our last meeting, I'll make 2 points. Number one, we're beginning to absorb much more what is in 25-1, which is the statute that was passed in the special session. And I'll be honest with you, even for those of us that are in the profession, we're still absorbing what was in there and what was going forward. The main focus of our commission, in my opinion, and I want everybody else's opinion, the main focus of our opinion, besides addressing all the housing thing, is to, at this point, is to find what direction we are going to go in the housing plan, whether it's going to be a municipal housing plan or whether it's going to be a regional housing plan. I've been in contact with the individuals, again, from the South Central Regional Council of Governments. They are hiring someone for that position to assist us. And I think I mentioned this at the first meeting, and I'll reiterate it again. It would appear to me, after my review of the statute and the requirements, that a vast majority of the municipalities in the state, including Woodbridge, would be overwhelmed to try to do it. We don't have the staff. Even though we have until 2029, we don't have the staff, and we really need the assistance of the South Central Regional Council of Governments. I did receive their assurance that two things. Number one, when they get their feet on the ground, because their feet aren't totally on the ground yet, they will come here and present to us to explain it to us. And number two, that the initial plans they have involve substantial public input, which they will work on, but they would expect local commissions or committees to work on addressing public input. So if you go with the regional plan, you're not going to be just shoved aside and look at. We are going to be, at least the way I understand it, their conduit and going back and forth. Second of all, in addition to that statute, there are a substantial amount of housing laws even though this is a short session, pending up there. Some of which impact on what was passed, some of which impact on other issues that were addressed. And the example that I sent to all of you tonight, which we may discuss further, is what is known as the Golden Girls statute. And by the way, you're having a conversation, as I was today, with somebody much younger than me, and I made reference to the Golden Girls statute. He had no idea who the Golden Girls TV show was until I finally explained it to him in detail, in which they labeled it after that, indicating a situation where you could have multiple people renting, rooms, so to speak, in their house. And also, it addresses a serious ADU problems that occurred with the existing statute. So, since we are looking at ADUs and other issues, it's one of those things where, to some extent, you've got to step back and you've got to say, well, what happens with the statute? It has been cleared from committee, so what I think it is, it may have already passed the House. I'm not 100% sure. But it seems to have a substantial amount of support. So those are my comments. We have the housing stuff, the land use stuff is coming not in little ripples, it's coming in waves. And when you combine the statutes, so we need to be able to absorb it all as it comes in and know where they're going. And the other thing is, we don't want to pick and start working on things that are either duplicious as to what we can achieve elsewhere, or are, in a sense, unnecessary towards going towards our plan. We want to be able to focus because of the statutes. And one final thing I will make, because, I read, I've been trying to read as much as I can that comes out, and I'm not sure who, it may have been Kathy or Mary that sent me something from Common Ground. Was that? Yeah.
It was the memo from that
Right.
Common Ground sent to the BOS in February.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, in reading through it, and I'll close with this, there is obviously a public perception out there that what we did 4 years ago in the housing plan, should be poo-pooed and thrown out, because it's obsolete. Which I'm going to be very frank, which indicates that you really didn't know what was in the housing plan and what we did. We weren't ordering anything. We did, I think, a fantastic job of assembling facts. And those facts were just to identify, with the help of Christine Sullivan, who was our staff, where housing could go. And strangely enough, in the housing plan that is required by all the towns, that's what you have to do. And in order to do that, a commission is not saying housing, if they're not identifying where housing will go. It's very important to understand it's where housing can go. And those tend to flow, and this is higher density housing. They tend to flow along infrastructure routes. So if you take your sewer line, you take your water line, you take your gas line, and you follow that, that's what you do. But what everybody's got to understand is that what we identified were the ones most suitable for that. And I'll close with this, because I think it's important to realize that. When we did that, we did not,
Sorry.
we did not identify any parcel on Bitcher Road. We did not identify the parcel across from Beecher School as a parcel that would have it. We didn't identify that. That wasn't within our, that isn't, you know, it has the infrastructure, it has everything. And it's not even that far from the public transportation, because we discussed at one point creating, I'll let you know, creating a loop. I know that, you know, you were the only one that wasn't on it of the group of us. We discussed at one point creating a loop of the bus that ran through downtown, down Beecher Road, and then down, back down to Fountain, and then back down. But we didn't identify those parcels. Driving here tonight from my house, I go down, I live on Rimmon, take a left on Beecher, and I'm driving down, and there is a, I believe, Houlihan and Lawrence sign that says there's a piece of property, house, barn, and 7.5 acres. Now, this one is between Rimmon and Center. Again, we never identified that parcel, but house, barn, and 7 acres could probably create, depending on wetlands and everything, a 250 unit apartment. If you know what I mean? But it has sewer and water. So these are the things. So the way you attract, and I want people to understand this, the way you convince developers not to build there is to give them other places to build that are not in the middle of the single-family homes, which is what they are. But those pieces that are in the middle of the single-family homes, if somebody wants to sell them for a large portion, they can. And once it goes 8-30G, you know, on 8-30G, I mean, you don't have to hire somebody to come in and explain it, because I've done them. You know what I mean? I can tell you exactly what's about, and they will be able to, in most cases, they will be able to create a case for it. And that's not what we would like. We would like to see them build in other locations that are not where these locations are.
Good evening. Try to do it.
No problem. A couple of things. Here's an agenda, and we had the minutes that we already passed, and we're going to, now that you're here, we're going to start the Kathy's presentation. But that's a 11/17 presentation. Okay. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it, because I've been reading everything that comes out. What's the group? There's a group that's opposing the stuff on across from Beecher School. Yeah, so I read all their flyers and everything like that. And I'm reading them to understand. And I do the same thing in my own practice. I read all the opposition, you know, to understand what so you can talk to them and express to them what the issues are. Our goal is not to create should not be, to create, say, you can build on every one of these parcels. But the goal that we had 4 years ago was clearly to identify the most appropriate parcels. And I'll grant you, very much so, that the parcel across from Beecher and the 7-acre parcel, they're not suitable for extremely high density. I think what a discussion we have to have is parcels like that, are they suitable for a duplex or a triplex? I don't know, you know what I mean? That's something different. But everybody's got to realize, you know, I just happened to see that sign driving down. I haven't seen it up, you know, and I drive down there all the time. So I said, oh, that just went for sale. 7 acres. And, you know.
Can you picture where it is?
Yeah, I picture it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a 17-something farmhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris McLaughlin is living in that house. That 27 Beecher Road, I don't know what it sold for, but it was listed for $535 for the house, the barn.
Yeah, that's a relatively good-sized house on that, isn't it?
Well, I don't know how big a house is, but I mean, $535,000 for all that land. There was 6.2 acres out there, and that's very attractive for a developer.
Oh, yeah, they all are. I mean, no matter where you are, there's when you know, we did it, when we were doing it, if you remember, we took, we had maps, GIS maps, and we drew, I did anyway, to make it easy for me, because I'm very visual. I drew lines along where the water was, where the sewer was. You know what I mean? Because you look at water and sewer and you remove the issue. Now, I'll tell you what's changed in the last 4 years, and then we can start with Kathy. What's changed in the last 4 years is due to the technology advances in septics. There can be 8-30Gs in, you know, that somebody can propose with septic as long as you have public water, and they've done this. And this, there's one, I can point it out to you, there's one that I got involved in belatedly for a different reason, that was to save a house that was supposed to be taken down because of the sewer reg. But the new sewer regulations have increased the gallonage from 7,500 to 10,000 gallons that you could have on these septic. So the development that I worked on is in Monroe. It's a 55 and over. It's not affordable. It's, you know, it's not affordable. It's just a 55 and over unit. It has 9 triplexes, 27 units on septic on 9 acres. So you take that 7-acre parcel, and the new regs are going into effect on January 1st to raise it to 10,000. And it's a certain amount of gallonages for bedroom. Per bedroom, it's the way they break it out.
Yeah.
But you take 7, or even the other Beecher Road address, you know, you can actually, if it didn't have sewers, they do. But you think of the number of large lots we have, or large parcels we have, they can now be developed doing that. So these are things that we have to keep in mind as to what they can do and how we can attract them to other places to do it, you know. I mean, like I said, like we talked about the downtown.
I appreciate the idea of trying to attract builders, you know, to locations that are more desirable in terms of the town as a whole, but they're in business. They're looking for maximum profit.
No. Yes, they do. They do.
Not all of them, but we
you
certainly have.
if you gave them a choice,
Yeah, no,
if you gave developers a choice between, most developers, 99%, 95% of developers, you gave them a choice between working it out with the town and doing 8-30J, they would want to work it out with the town.
Really?
Because it is, time is money. And when you work it out with the town, when you go in there and you can have an agreement on it, time is money. They know they'll get it quicker. They do not want to battle. There are a couple of developers, I will tell you, I know that they just go in, Vessel that does, they build,
They did a container.
huh?
They did a container.
Well, they build the units somewhere else and then come and put them together. You know what I mean? Modular. I couldn't do it. They build modular. They go into a town and they just want to do an 8-30. That's basically it. They don't even, sometimes they don't even talk, you know, the other way. But the majority of the ones that I deal with, they would gladly come into a town, and if the town said, listen, work with us on it, you know what I mean? Because there are factors that really impact their cost, because it is money. So for example, if you increase, you may know that, if you increase your density to accommodate an 8-30J, and you go up over, what is it, 4 stories?
Be over 4.
You gotta go to metal, whatever, you gotta do something.
Depends on how you handle the base.
Okay, right, yeah. See, now you're getting into that. The group that in Shelton that did the 100 units in Fountain Square, by keeping it at 100, keeping it at a certain level, they were still able to provide the town with 20% affordable units. You know, because they said it's better, if we go 8-30G, we have to bump it up another floor or two, it's gonna cost us more money to do that. It's gonna eat one way or the other. So I'm getting into that, but I mean, these are
Okay, yeah,
things,
no,
I just wanna
I
know,
hear
this
that.
is the kind of ideas, and I thought that was coming in. With that, I would like to turn it over to Kathy Hunter to make the presentation.
All right, thank you. Turn this on.
Board of Duties, I'm Kathy Hunter, and I was a previous member of the Housing Committee, and before that, I also was a member of Dominic's group, the Housing Study Opportunities Committee that prepared the affordable housing plan that gets submitted on time to the state of Connecticut. It was, as Dominic says, it was a great plan. We're very proud of that plan. And just because it's not recognized by the state of Connecticut doesn't mean it's still relevant. It should be used as a guiding process for the housing growth plan, because there's a lot of good information in the strategies. And if you haven't read the plan, you should really read the plan, because the strategies are still germane in what will happen in this housing growth plan. I was also a member of the Planning and Zoning Committee. I just wanted to commission, I just want to throw that in. And just a little bit of my background in the housing sector. I worked for the City of Bridgeport, was the Deputy Director of Department of Housing for the City of Bridgeport, and I was involved in a lot of planning activities. I was there long enough to work on 2 planned conservation developments. And I worked on, economic development strategies and affordable housing plans. So I do have a lot of background in housing and planning. I also managed the HUD funding for the City of Bridgeport, and we were able to assist in a number of housing developments and supportive housing. And thereafter, I worked for a nonprofit organization called Supportive Housing Work. It's now known as the Housing Collective. You might be familiar with some of their webinars and informational sessions that they put on. But there I also worked on, I was on the other side now. I was working on developing supportive housing, because that was a major strategy to end homelessness in Fairfield County as in the nation. So in terms of this presentation, a couple of the commission members suggested maybe we should just have an overview of what we did as a housing committee. And I have to say we did a lot in the housing committee, and I'm just going to kind of focus on the last year. But as we go through a lot of the work that we did was in the area of education, of just trying to educate folks on housing. And just an overview from the charge. Basically, our charge was to implement the affordable housing plan and the strategies. And we did serve as an educational advisory and coordinating role, worked with a lot of external partners and worked with committees and commissions, and really wanted to create a way to bring more public participation in the process. So as I said, education, we really want to focus on education of residents to promote a better understanding for the need of affordable housing. And one of the sessions we had last year this time was housing key to sustainable growth and economic prosperity. We did that in conjunction with the Economic Development Commission, and we had a pretty good panel of experts that were at that informational session. We had Michael Santoro from the Department of Housing. We had Phoebe Kloof from LISC. We had Dale Krupp. Dale Krupp was helping out the Economic Development Commission at the time. I think he's still helping out the Economic Development Commission. He provided, a lot of good information on how housing promotes economic development in towns. We had David Morgan from TEAM, and he was great in providing a human touch as to the need of housing. He talked about how there was about 300 Woodbridge residents, households that would come to TEAM Inc., and that's a human services agency, that were in need of housing assistance and energy assistance and food assistance. So there is there is a need within our own town for housing options. And this was facilitated by our town planner, Justin LaFountain of Goldman, New York, and he provided a really great overview of the demographics in the town. So if you haven't seen this session, all these videos are on the town's website, and I would encourage everybody to check that video out, because it did provide a lot of great information. And then In June, we had a conversation, housing community development. We had a conversation that revolved around a short film that the Scribe created in conjunction with David Fink. And David Fink had interviewed some residents within affordable housing developments. And the crux of that film was really to just kind of break down the stereotypes of what people perceive as affordable housing and people that live in affordable housing. And then we had, again, a conversation after we saw the film. And again, this is all on video. In July, this was an interesting session. We had housing and conservation, not mutually exclusive. It was a live Zoom roundtable discussion that was hosted by the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. It was facilitated by David Hinden from the Conservation Council, and it featured Connie Maines, she was part of the Housatonic Valley Association, and that session was just a discussion with recommendations from a report they did that talked about how land trusts and housing groups could work together to create sustainable communities that could use like some of the land from the land trust to actually carve out some potential sites for housing and how they work together. And so I thought that session was pretty interesting because we did have representation from the land trust and the park association, and wasn't like necessarily they were running out to identify land that they had, but it was just a good means of being able to be in the same room and have this discussion, and they got to see what goes on in other areas of the state. In our last session, the end of this year, we had Mark Grants back. He did a training on fair and affordable housing, and that was part of the required training for land use officials. And then we partnered that with, since there was the House Bill 8002 had passed around that time, we had both Mark Grants and we had Sean Gio, who was the policy director in the Partnership for Strong Communities, come in and talk about some of the components of the House Bill 8002. And the question and answer part of that session I thought was really interesting, with the audience asking questions, and Mark and Sean just kind of tag team answers. So again, that's another good session you should look up and watch. So some of the outreach that we did as a committee, we participated in Earth Day and Woodbridge Like Me Day. And Earth Day is coming up next Saturday, and I hope there is a table out there for housing. I did bring some, and I don't know, should I do a show and tell on the different, we always have a nice setup for a table, and we parlay it into Sustainable CT. Because Sustainable CT is a certification process by which a town progresses towards being a sustainable community. In Woodbridge, I think just got their certification for a bronze certification. But you could get more points by following some of these activities, and all these activities provide points in order for you to get higher certifications. We also use this as an opportunity to just kind of highlight the homeless providers that are in our area, because these homeless providers, when some Woodbridge folks, when they lose their housing, they can't sustain their housing and they end up becoming homeless. These are the agencies that are taking care of people that end up having housing instability issues in town. So the timing of Earth Day is good because it's a couple weeks before the Great Give, and so what we do is we have flyers for like New Reach or Bethel Center or Columbus House, and folks could, we have a QR code, and then folks could actually go into their Given page and be set to participate in the Great Give, which is, I think it's like May 6th and 7th. It's a 36-hour Given platform. So it just is a way to raise awareness on homelessness. And, you know, I have, we have some posters, and one of it is a cardboard, piece of cardboard that talks about like someone tonight is sleeping on cardboard in this area. So again, it's just raising awareness for homelessness. And the other outreach, and this is, you know, we have to give this to Elaine Philman, who unknowingly created a chapter of All In for the town of Woodbridge. And this emerged from our community conversations we were having in discussing housing. And so All In is just dedicated to bringing people together to discuss matters of public concern, not only housing, but it just, you know, it's just a way of having folks come together and talk about issues. And they had a great event last week where they had a tour of the teen center on 10 Selden. I don't know if anybody has been in the teen center. I always go by it, but you know, I never actually gone in, and it's pretty cool, you know, asset we have in town. So again, it's just this was the work that we were doing in housing, just trying to talk to people and create awareness of things. We did coordinate with other committees. We did have a joint meeting between the Housing Committee and Zoning Commission. We invited Michael Santaro to talk about inclusionary incentive zones and how that works. And that is now part of the Housing Growth Plan. It's called, I think it's called Priority Housing Development Zones now, but that's the same thing. The idea is you zone for an area of land, and then you allow for higher density, but it has to be as of right. And so that is, you know, it's still in the Housing Growth Bill. It's just called something else now. I also provide monthly reports to Plan and Zoning Commission every month. I was a member of Plan and Zoning, and because of that, I was able to report every month what the Housing Committee did, because it was just really important to keep that coordination going on. And I highly encourage that continues. It was a standing item on the agenda, and right now it's off the agenda. We really got to get that item back on the agenda. We provided input into planning documents. We provided recommendations to the Woodbridge Country Club master plan. And then when that plan didn't really pan out the way we thought it was going to shape up, we ended up doing some public comment to talk about the plan and the fact that it should have, you know, affordable housing, at least as part of the housing mix, and it shouldn't be age restricted. So that Woodbridge Country Club is one of those areas, one of the few areas where you could have higher density housing, and really, you know, we felt that it really needs to be used for a good size of housing. You know, it's a big tract of land. It's 155 acres. You could at least have, you know, a third of it be for housing, and the rest be preserved. But we felt there should be more housing than what the plan was showing. We also had invited SCROG to do a presentation on the regional housing plan, and I know you probably get a lot of information that's thrown at you, but that's another document you should look at, the regional housing plan, because that really helped us inform some of our recommendations in the POCD. And the regional housing plan talked about how to increase site selection for housing development. And one of the exercises they had, like for towns, is like if you had expanded your infrastructure out, your public water sewer infrastructure by a half a mile, what does that look like? What sites would become available for development? So that helped us, inform some recommendations that we made to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to incorporate into the POCD. So moving forward, the recommendation is to continue as we talked about, continue to defend and draw upon the Affordable Housing Plan recommendations as a guidance. But many of the planning firms felt that this plan was a really good, solid plan, and it really is consistent with more of the recent state legislation. It's consistent with the SCROG's regional housing strategy. It's consistent with the state's plan of conservation and development. We had a number of recommendations that went into the POCD. They started taking a lot of recommendations out. I would just really encourage you as a commission to make sure nothing else gets taken out of the POCD in terms of housing. And this is, my plug for supporting regional collaboration. And, Dominic alluded to this earlier. It's really important to work with the COGS. The COGS do provide, a level of expertise to develop strategies. They can provide the data and research and analysis on the infrastructure and environmental constraints, and they can help align the plans with the regional plans and the transit-oriented and fair housing goals. And the SCROG could help. Will provide the capacity for us to have a really strong regional housing plan. So I don't think we have to make a decision right now. Do we have to do a municipal plan? Do we have to do a regional plan? I would work with the SCROG. I mean, you have until, I think, June 2029 to produce a plan, but I think it's really beneficial to be part of a regional plan. It's not saying that's going to be, we'll still have a Woodbridge component of the plan. So it's still going to be, there's still going to be local information on what to do in Woodbridge, but really take advantage of the SCROG expertise, and they can also provide, a way to be eligible for different infrastructure grants. So I think it just would be far more beneficial to just stay regional and work regional. And continue working with entities that provide added capacity for developing housing. We talked about LISC. The Local Initiative Support Corporation, they provide for community engagement, development capacity, and financing for affordable housing. And the town has been meeting regularly with LISC to create pathways for developing housing and looking at site selections, identifying potential partners for envisioning what a development could look like, and then creating a community engagement plan. The idea is to make sure you get the community input, and so if a housing development goes in front of Planning and Zoning Commission, there's not going to be this divisiveness about it. People will be united in wanting a type of development. So obviously these activities need to be folded into the Housing Commission. So there we're talking about being part of the agenda for the May agenda.
Well, just so you know, I received an email, I guess, Leash, this, how do you print it? LIS, contacted the Board of Selectmen, and maybe the one involved sent an email then to myself and Nicole Donzello of Coopop. Sounds like cool pop. To both of us, asking us if we can participate in a conference call with her. So we have one set up for Thursday this week. It's just to explain. So at that point, I'll be able to, absorb what she says and possibly, indicate that we would want a presentation to our committee. That's something in the future. Although I believe, and Kathy, you may know more about them than I do. I believe that they participate in in a variety of affordable housing type plans, but they also focus on some of the larger affordable, projects where they arrange funding that are not the
So-
20%, 30%, but these are, a substantial of affordable housing going all the way down to 30% AMI.
Yeah, I mean, there is a, difference between affordable housing developments. You have your assisted units, which is, the units that could be 100% affordable from a different range, from 100% AMI to 30% AMI, and those are the types of developments they work with. I mean, I know some residents are interested in that because it does provide a lot of, housing unit equivalency points in order to reach a moratorium, as opposed to having to do it through a set aside where you're getting, 10, 20% of your housing units. It takes, you have to just build more housing in order to get the necessary affordable housing units. Woodbridge is a very wealthy community, so you may be able to get one of these types of developments, but they do specialize in, as Dominic said, in those assisted units. That has a very complicated capital stack, because there's a lot of different public subsidies that go in there to make that happen. And some additional topics to think about. We had talked about this as a housing commission, working with the sustainability committee to learn about zero net energy housing developments. There's an interesting development in Guilford that's a zero net energy housing development. In fact, it's on our poster board if anybody's interested in looking at that. And it came together by some Woodbridge residents that are leaders in the housing arena. So you had Jim Paley, who's the executive director of the New Haven Housing Services group, and he worked with Capital for Change, and Carla Weil is a Woodbridge resident that works for Capital for Change. She provided the financing, and you had, what was the other group? You had New Horizons Neighbor Works, that was the nonprofit developer that did this development in Guilford, and that was a home ownership development. So you had, a number of home ownership developments in Guilford, and, it may be an interesting project that maybe the sustainability committee would be interested in doing. It was the developer was Green Planet Company, and so they do the sustainable development. So it may be something that I would think folks would be interested in. Also, to elevate the need for affordable housing for people with disabilities. I mean, we have a dire lack of affordable housing. We really have a terrible lack of housing for people with disabilities, and we have that need in town. So we do have a human services organization in Woodbridge, Marrakesh, who could come and talk to you about the need for housing for people with disabilities. And I know they have talked to the town from time to time. We had talked about this also, to recapitalize the town's homeownership rehab program. We have a rehab program. I don't think it's really been advertised as much, but I know there's got to be a need for this. And this is a great program for people of low and moderate income who need repairs, necessary repairs on their house. They could get a loan to do the necessary repairs. It could be that they have some, even like housing enforcement issues, and could come in and do the needed repairs, and then that is put on, the assistance is put on as a loan, lien on the property, and they don't have to pay the loan until after the house is, sold. It's a zero interest loan, so you're just paying back the funding that you get. But it's a really good program. So we had suggested from time to time that the town look to recapitalize that a little bit more. It serves as a revolving loan, so once the house is sold, then that funding goes back into the homeownership, pot and to help like the next person. Advise the town on starting a housing trust fund, but I think Amy's going to be maybe talking about that. We've been talking about that for a while. Housing trust fund provides funding that's really important for critical funding that you might need for pre-development, for just, exploring project feasibility. That funding is really hard to find in order to start a project, so it really helps fill critical gaps in housing development. So really that's a project that I think this commission should undertake, and certainly you should be involved in making recommendations for how this funding gets spent. And I just added this last box because I saw a couple weeks ago there was a presentation of Board of Selectmen with some students being interested in public service, recruiting a high school student to participate on the Housing Commission. We had
We
did
have,
have one.
that's on the agenda,
yeah.
item number 10. they
Yeah, but
contacted me voice.
we had we actually had a high school student, because we felt strongly about this, that you really need age diversity on these committees, and you need to have a representation of young people to be on these committees, and it's a great learning experience. I know they talk about, it's good for college applications, but the senior that we had in our group was really, really interested in the issue of affordable housing, and he, as I said, he turned 18 early in the year, so he was actually able to, participate as a full commission member for a time period until he went off to college. And there's just some recommendations for continued coordination. Again, prepare a monthly report to Town Planning and Zoning Commission, and have that report read into the record. You could give the report to Jeff or Chris, and have that read into the record, because it's really, I don't think you want to sit there for the whole meeting, because it's usually at the end of the agenda, but it is really important to make sure that the Housing Commission and Town Plan and Zoning Commission work is coordinated. Continue to...
Just on that point, so we know that we talked about last week, I've already been contacted by the chairman of planning and zoning, speaking to the first selectman, everybody that as we, again, they're dumping stuff on us very, very much, but as we get into this, we need to have a meeting with TPZ, conservation, economic development, and us, and work on, and Coupop, and we need to, that's a lot of people, but we need to really have the ability to have an exchange between those, so that just to really avoid being siloed, everybody being siloed. And the chairman of planning and zoning agreed with me on that, that we didn't want to be in our own little silo. We need to be able, maybe not immediately, but it's very quickly, we need to have some communication between the others, so everybody gets to express their ideas freely to the others. So that's a very important thing high on the agenda.
Yep. Let's see, along those lines, we're just going back to Coupop. Again, I think they kind of almost finished the review, but I think there's, the bigger tract of land, definitely you need to have your input in that. And, continue to work with conservation. We did have a joint meeting at the end of the year, and it was interesting that to at least have that level of conversation. They had a lot of questions. Conservation Committee had a lot of questions of the Housing Committee. Some basic questions. Really, again, it's just stressing the educational aspect of what affordable housing is and why we need it. Ensuring that community-based groups, you're listening to community-based groups, would that be all in, and other local committees and commissions, and continue to participate in the SCROG's regional housing meetings. They do have quarterly meetings, and it's just good to be part of that and to listen in what everybody else is doing. And so they are quarterly. I will say that the next meeting, I think that goes to the next slide. Or I'll cover that. Other recommendations, plan for public comment at each meeting and continue to participate in Earth Day and Woodbridge Like New Day. We do a lot of great engagement, outreach and engagement, and people do have questions, and we have lots of information, and people do come to our tables and are interested. So, I think the more information you put out there, the better. And monitor social media, public hearing comments, commission meetings to identify and help correct information. There's a lot of wrong information out there, and you need to call it out, and you need to address it at meetings, or else it creates a life of its own. Recommendations for educational programs. We talked about doing a presentation panels and on ADUs. I know Mary was engaged with Town of Fairfield because they had a panel on how to create ADUs, how to plan for it, how to develop it, incentives the towns could do in order to create ADUs that could be affordable. I mean, there's state statutes, provide for tax abatements.
I don't know if I didn't send it to you, I should. The House bill that was voted out of committee, called the Golden Girls Bill.
Yeah.
That bill, I sent it up to everybody in the OLR review of it. So that's something that we need to keep our eye on because, again, similar to the language in 25-1 concerning what we need to do by July 1st, that has a date on it of October 1st, and it repeals 8-20, which is the ADU statute. It repeals it and substitutes a whole new statute for it.
And that's the one we bought into. We followed
Yeah,
the
we're one of the
guidelines.
few towns that actually did not opt out of the ADUs. So
Right.
that was the problem. That was the weakness of our ADU back when Public Act 21-29 passed, is that towns had the option to opting out, and 2/3 of the towns did opt out. But we did, at least Woodbridge did, opt in, and we never opted out. So
Right,
we have a
and-
pretty robust.
And this
ADU.
probably will have less of an impact on Woodbridge than
Right.
it would have
Yeah.
on the other
Yeah.
communities. But-
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have affordable ADUs, then you gotta, provide the incentives to do that. No one's gonna build an ADU to,
What's interesting in here is they don't require no such accessory unit shall be required to be affordable.
no, you can't require it, but you can provide incentives.
It's incentives for them to do it, but ADUs really are one of the most natural form of affordable units,
Yeah.
small a.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's going to amount to a lot of affordable housing units, but again, the private market does not create affordable housing. You have to have incentives in order to create that. So if you're looking to have ADUs, provide some affordable housing, then you really do have to provide the incentives to do that. We had talked about hosting a developers roundtable so people just understand the mechanics of how to create affordable housing. And continue an informational session on Public Act 25-1. There's a lot of different components to this. You have not only the legislation that's coming out that has to be passed in July, you have the understanding of what the developable housing inventory looks like, and understanding what our goals are. And just how that all plays in, so people understand why we have to do a housing growth plan. And I think the more education we could provide for each step along the way, the easier it will be for people to buy into the housing growth plan. And another meeting on housing conservation. I was just thinking next month, SCROG is having a session on housing and conservation, and they kind of stole our title, not mutually exclusive. But, it might be, again, an opportunity to take the recording and show it and have another community conversation. And again, it's just, getting people in the room together and to talk about how this, the possibility of working together on that. And, the last slide are just to reemphasize the guiding principle of our committee was always that affordable housing should not be concentrated in one area, that it really needs to be integrated throughout the town. And some zoning recommendations we had that we have provided to the POCD. I don't know if this ever made it into the POCD, but it's really increasing where you can have multifamily housing development. Right now, we have a very prescribed area as to where we have multifamily housing development. It has to have infrastructure, has to have public sewer, public water, and it can't be in a public water supply watershed. You could increase that to have it in any area in residential A that has access to public water and public sewer. Even if it's not in the public water supply watershed, you should be able to build. If you have public water, public sewer, you should be able to have higher density housing. There's also, as Dominic was talking about earlier, there have been some advances in septic systems. There is some areas, soil permitting, where you can have higher density housing, where there's water, where there's a good soil type. So it's like soil-based zoning. You could think about, zoning in that aspect, where you could have higher density housing in areas not served by public water and public sewer. And then, just reducing the lot sizes. You don't need to have 2-acre zoning to have a septic and a well. You can have smaller. You could do this in some areas. You could do a half-acre lot. So, come up with, areas where you could reduce your lot sizes, to, 3/4 of an acre, a half an acre, perhaps close to town amenities. And this will create, more smaller, more affordable housing, more single-family homes, and reduce the barriers to development. And while preserving the larger lot areas in environmentally sensitive areas.
It's a fine idea, but where in this town you find anything like that?
You'd have to test the soil.
It's not here. It doesn't exist here.
When I moved to Woodbridge, bought a house right near the country club, and it had previously been owned by some town official in Orange. Anyway, subdivided it into half-acre lots. There were probably 30 of those half-acre lots.
Yeah.
It was done in the 20s,
Yeah.
but they were fine. Nobody had problems with their septics or with their wells. It was a very nice neighborhood, but there were small houses,
Whoops.
1,500, 1,700
Whoops.
square foot houses.
Ended with a bang.
Oh,
And then there's another one of those developments up the road behind Brookside.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
There's a development like that up there as well.
That's right.
And there-
Right, no, I think there's areas where it's okay to have, half-acre lots. I mean, as you said, there are,
It works. And
yeah, it works.
the other thing is
It
it
works
reduces-
only if you can get the septic people to buy into it.
Well,
Quinnipiac Valley Health District either buys into it or it's not happening.
Right, right.
oh yeah, that's the whole point. It's
Well, yeah, I
really-
mean,
it's really
that's,
basic.
right, and as long as it's approved by the,
What are we, Quinnipiac?
Right, I mean, it should, that's how you should create, if it's okay by the.
They've been looking
health
for
district.
the septic plan and then a backup septic
Right.
field. And then they want 75 feet minimum from the well.
Mhm.
And you got limitations in this town with wetlands and ledge and slope. I think that's a pipe dream.
I will push back and disagree with it. I think there are areas where you could, I'm not saying everywhere, but there are areas
Where?
where.
Where?
Well, that's, the testing would have
Have to
to
test
be
it.
done. I don't know how many more larger parcels there are in the town, but one of the things that's being done in other towns is if you do, even with septics, if you do cluster housing, they go down to anywhere from
That's
3/4.
different animal, different animal.
Yeah, right.
And this is talking single-family housing, and I don't think it
No, that
exists in this town anymore.
Cluster or single family. What I mean is you take.
Cluster
Cluster
housing is
together.
clustering higher
Put them
density.
more on a single lot, that I get.
Yeah.
That's viable potentially, but it will run into the same problem.
You're always going to, the first step in all of this is going to be, and unfortunately, when we use the term infrastructure, we only think of sewer, water, gas. Infrastructure is also the ability of your soil to adapt to septic, and we're very strict in that in the departments. And I've had just recently, I had clients walk away from a single-family housing development because when the testing was done, they were not going to get the density that they wanted. So that does happen. I mean, they will go in,
Well,
they
that's
will look
that
at it.
happened with building an ADU. I know somebody was, denied building an ADU because they didn't have the.
And that's the other big thing about
Capacity.
ADUs, is you don't just build an ADU, you don't just get it
Yeah.
approved. If you're adding more bedrooms, you've got to go back to Quinnipiac and ask them, okay, what do I need to do to my
Septic field.
septic field?
Right.
Something like that.
I did
So-
want to just show some of the,
The other issue that never gets considered is the aquifer. Nobody talks about the aquifer.
About the what?
The
Aquifer, the-
Nobody
well,
talks about it. And
We're-
we've got some very sensitive parts of this town where the aquifer, in years past, has been weak. Nobody talks about that.
Well, currently, and I'm thinking here, if you're doing development in an aquifer protection area, you're required to notify both the water company and the Department of Public Health. So the minute you're identified as being in an aquifer protection area, so when somebody comes into me for a subdivision, one of the first things I've got to do, I'll either check it myself or say to the engineer, are we in an aquifer protection area? Because then I'm obligated as the attorney to notify the Department of Public Health and notify the water company. I deal a lot with Aquarian, and Aquarian is, I don't want to say aggressive, that's the wrong word. Aquarian responds, Department of Public Health doesn't. Aquarian responds and they address aquifer issues, and I'm dealing with them right now. And then they get involved. I haven't really done one where you would have to notify South Central Regional Water, but you are required in aquifer protection areas to notify them and to address any issues that they. And so there are some protections that are out there, but it's all a matter of enforcement. The entities you got to notify.
quickly, I just wanted to show some of the posters that we did. This is the ADU poster that we did. It provides, information about the benefits and how to do an ADU. And we had this on during all our community events, and now it's sitting on Chris Sullivan's desk so people could see that. So that's for promoting ADUs. And this is just, this was a development I was talking about in Guilford, the homeownership, net zero energy development, homeownership development. That could be an interesting project, and maybe we could find, locate a piece of property for doing something like that. I think this would be something, residents would buy into. And these are just examples of other examples of affordable housing throughout the state. I think that one's from Lascana. People were talking about Lascana a lot. That is a 100% affordable housing development. It goes from 100% AMI to, I believe, 30% AMI. But it's a beautiful development. And
Is that the one in orange?
yes.
That's beautiful.
And this was a poster that our high school committee member created for Earth Day. Just wanted to show that. Miles Katz did that. And this was just something we show for Earth Day, and just bringing awareness for homeless prevention. That, someone tonight is using this to sleep on. It's just, Woodbridge is not immune to homelessness. We've had people that became homeless in Woodbridge, and it's just creating that awareness. So that is that. And
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I really
Great,
appreciate it
Kathy.
and informative in having us go forward. I think we'll tailor ours to the statute. Everything's moving so fast, but I think this shows that we have a head start in going forward on a lot of the issues for discussion. And certainly a lot of the suggestions to bring people in, that information is very valuable. Amy, we're going to jump to you.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, actually, we already discussed some of the other
Thank
issues.
you, Kathy,
in the
that was
space.
wonderful.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Sorry if I
Appreciate it.
just
Yes, sure.
Thank you. I'm on my second of 3 meetings tonight, so I appreciate your jumping to me.
If you want to put it over, just take this one.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you.
Mary, you don't need a password here, do you? I'm
Shouldn't
on.
do, shouldn't have.
I'm on the internet.
You're number one.
I am on the internet. I guess because I've been on it before. Woodbridge guest. I don't think you need a password, do you?
Unless you already logged on,
Yeah.
you shouldn't. Do you need one?
Woodbridge Gas.
We could be on the video,
Internet.
internet.
Just trying to do Wi-Fi.
Oh,
Here, I'm sharing the password with David Lober. I just got asked. I have no idea what the password is, but I'm on it. David,
All right,
so I'll
thank you.
send it to you. Okay, so thank you for having me on here as a member of the ordinance committee for the Board of Selectmen. We're interested in working on 2 ordinances related to housing. One is the creation of a housing trust fund, which Kathy mentioned, and the other is incentives, tax incentives probably, could also be permitting, building permit waivers, but we were focused on tax incentives for ADUs and possibly other affordable housing. With respect to Housing Trust Fund, what we were hoping is you could actually help us find examples of existing ordinances that other towns have.
New Canaan.
Okay,
Stanford.
but if you could give us a few examples and comment on what you think is a good one, that would help get us started in our work in actually drafting an ordinance. So that's the first request for housing trust funds. Similarly, if you can find for us through research and give examples of tax incentives. With respect to ADUs in particular, the thought is that there are quite a few people who have existing ADUs. They may not be called an ADU now, they are in-law suites that are in their houses. But if we could give them a tax incentive to have them registered as affordable with what is current law, 10-year deed restriction, we would give them a break instead. I've only talked to one person directly about this who has one. His was grandfathered way back. It is a legal ADU.
There's an awful lot of grandfather ones.
Yeah.
Driving around Woodbridge.
Exactly, and so we want to get them to have an incentive to put the 10-year affordable housing, 10-year restriction of only affordable level rents on these ADUs in return for a tax break, basically. And the gentleman I spoke to said, yeah, 10 years is great. That's a horizon I can think about. And I would be interested in a tax incentive. So I think if we did this in the town, we would actually get some folks who would come forward and we would be able to have some improvement in our affordability offerings within town.
I think that there's an interesting point about that because, and I would certainly, Mike Santoro would be the person to really ask about it. For example, on Build CT, which a lot of my clients are using now, it's a 20-year restriction that you do. So you're coming in with a project, you're going to do 100. One client was going to do 100 units. He was the kind of person who would grab paper bags and hyperventilate over affordable housing, requirements. And all of a sudden he comes and says, I'm going to do 20. You are? I'm doing a Build CT. And so Build CT is through the Department of Housing in Chaffa. They fund the construction of the housing. The limit is only 20 years. And you have to have I think they're being a little too generous at the state level, that even if you pay it off in full, you only have to keep it for 6 years. So in the course of a seminar on housing run by Shelton's Shelton's Planning and Zoning with Mike Santora there, the question was asked, how many points do we get? And he stressed, you get points towards your 10% for those 20 years. You don't get points towards the moratorium. So apparently, and I wasn't aware of it, so I said to Mike, as he was walking out, I said, Mike, he said, yeah, there are, I think, and I understand, I think, without getting an official answer, that if you're doing the voluntary limitation less than the 40-year requirement under 8-30G, your points are towards the 10%, your points don't go towards the moratorium. So we have to confirm, that's something.
Well, that would be an aspect of research we'd appreciate.
Yeah, we need to, and that is important, because I do think it is very important for the towns to be proactive. It's something we'll discuss on coming off of the 40-year point. Because like you said, there are people who would, I'm proposing I don't think you have it, you don't have the problem in Woodbridge. In some of the towns that I work in, they have these ridiculous rules that say the lot size is 5,000 square feet, or R5, R4, whatever. And then they say, but it's 5,000 square feet per family. So that then stretches the lot. I grew up in a neighborhood of 5,000 square feet with 2 and 3 family homes. We had parking off the street and everything like that. So the effort is to create more affordable housing by going in and saying to a builder or to a homeowner, you can take that from that 1 family to a 2 family. Because back in 1952, that was a 2 family. You switched, you know what I mean? And you can do that, but you got to dedicate the extra unit as an affordable unit. The 40 years scares them. Like you said, if you go in and say,
Most mortgages are only 30 or
30
less.
years, right, yeah. So if you go in and say 10 years, and that's a good point with the ADUs, I think it's an incentive for these people to come forward, register them, and put it on the record. And then, to be very honest with you, some of them may find out at 80% AMI, there's no reason not to have the restriction on.
No, absolutely.
Because your rent is going to be comparable to
Yeah.
market rate.
Yeah, no.
So that's a good thing for us to take a look at.
Yeah,
and
we would
research.
appreciate it. I
Yeah.
mean, we want to improve the numbers whether they go to the moratorium or not. We want to improve the numbers, right?
Yes, that's
So-
right.
so-
Yeah.
But you gotta keep it straight. I was just worried that 10% might not qualify at all, because I hadn't heard 10% in any kind of.
10 years.
10 years.
I mean,
10 years.
10 years. That's
Yeah.
what I-
That's a question for, there's a lot of talk about allowing the towns and its education to be more creative in doing that. Because the 40-year thing scares, it may not scare a big developer doing a 100-unit or 200-unit project, but it certainly scares when you have a small, a small development. And why can't some of those be, at least for a period of time? And the ADUs are a prime example of that. I will say, you found Housing Trust in New Canaan?
In New Canaan.
Yeah, I found Stanford's, and I actually downloaded, I forgot to bring it with me
That's
tonight.
right.
I downloaded their trust, their actual trust.
Okay.
And it's very interesting. I did not get a chance to absorb it, but
Well, if you could
Yeah,
report.
Dominic,
Yeah.
I could add that we also did research on the Housing Trust Fund. We had provided the ordinance committee at the time, we weren't on it. Guilford has a really good housing trust fund ordinance that we had provided to the ordinance committee at that time.
Okay, well, Steve Mono didn't mention that, and, he's been the chair.
Yeah, no, he
But-
has it, so.
But
yeah, I
maybe
think
you
so.
could look at that and the other ones and
Yeah.
guess which ones you think are best. and
one thing
Yeah.
one thing that's
Make
an
some
advantage.
recommendations.
Yeah, one thing that's an advantage to this area, there's no such thing as plagiarism
Yeah.
in these.
No, I think lawyers are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
If I could, though, just a couple of other things if I could suggest, and this is just for me individually, but I would emphasize the advantage of the small cities grants. That's something that was started when I was first selectman, and I saw personally the difference it made for people to be able to use that money to improve their homes. One of the areas where homes were particularly in need of improvement was the Highlands area. which was mentioned before. A caveat about those smaller lots, I knew personally people who had problems with their wells because
Yeah.
they had failing septic systems near them, and people had no place to put in an alternative septic system. And so I think there's a real issue that you can long-term have with tighter housing if you don't have the distances between wells and septic systems, and you don't have backup area for septic systems. That is a living example of it. But the other thing that wasn't mentioned, and I keep thinking that this is an opportunity, is working to Kathy's point, I too would prefer that we have smaller developments throughout our town. That's what the LISC representative recommended at the April 30th housing forum that you all offered, those of you who were on the prior housing committee and now are on the commission. And we have a number of religious institutions in town that have extra land. I think there's an opportunity to have a conversation with them about what their interest might be and how we could facilitate that.
I do
Please don't
think-
take that off the list.
No, not, I do think 25-1, which is.
The new law.
Yeah, 8002, called now 25-1. I think that has a provision in there on the religious properties, and they're trying to focus some of them towards summary review. You
Right,
know,
well,
if
there was a discussion actually in the legislature about it, yes.
Yeah.
So that the towns would be exempt. This is a little different. Towns would be limited in their review if a religious institution wanted to do something. This is a little different. This is actually having the Housing Commission go and talk to people who are board members or faith leaders of these institutions. I had one conversation with the then, I think it's president of B'nai Jacob, who was interested. And so I think it's worthwhile talking to them. The question is whether, when I talked a long time ago to somebody from LISC, they said that sometimes the towns would help set up a nonprofit so that there was a nonprofit overseeing wherever these different smaller communities were of development. And I don't know whether the religious institutions would be interested in sort of an umbrella nonprofit, so that they themselves don't have to be the ones managing. They might be
Well-
willing to lease their land, like the model of,
Yeah.
actually like the model of what we have down on Lucy Street. You know, the town leases the land,
Yeah.
so to speak, and then we now have, we have the building
Those were the
on
ones
top of
that
it.
ran out and you just, did
They're in
they-
the process of a new
renewing
deal.
the-
Yeah, yes.
renewing the
That land is
affordable.
leased.
Huh?
That land is leased.
Technically, I think
Yeah.
we lease the land. I haven't reviewed the new documents, they're not out yet with the new person who's gonna run the buildings.
That's my understanding.
But it's my understanding that the town doesn't own the buildings, but is the landlord of the
Where the
land.
land is.
Yeah, and
That's
so,
a,
and so
that
you
is
could
a-
do something similar like that with the religious institutions, so they didn't have to have oversight, right? necessarily.
is that a 62 and over community?
Uh,
The one on Lucy Street?
I don't know what the age limit
I
is.
think, yeah.
I don't think it's 55 and over, I think it's 62 and over.
Really? That high?
I don't know, we'll see, we're having somebody,
I
we're
think
working
you-
on
Yeah.
somebody new coming
Yeah.
in, so we'll see what the new rules are.
Disabled too.
Huh?
I think you can. apply
When
for
it's the 62 and over statute, the federal statute is 62 and over and fully disabled. Okay? In the 55 and over, the fully disabled doesn't apply. So if you're age restricted, that doesn't qualify you for being in, yeah.
I mean, Meek has been negotiating this, I haven't seen the
Yeah.
documents
Well, I mean,
yet,
what I
so
mean is
don't know.
those are the kind of things, you know, as far as, you know, these trust funds and everything, and the religious communities, I mean, there are a few issues they've got to sort out, but there are a lot of religious communities that are interested in.
There's a
Part of the reason, frankly, is a lot of these religious communities are ending off with excess land. You know what I mean? As they consolidate.
And financial
Yeah,
problems.
Yeah,
Development.
and financial problems, yeah. And they are, I mean, and one thing, I'll tell you mine, and this is a point, because with this land, Huntington Congregational was having serious financial issues in Huntington Center in Cheltenham, and they ended off selling the rear piece to a developer. It was, initially it was gonna be like 25, then down to 20, and then when I became involved, got approved for 16 cluster single-family homes, getting sewer and water, and eventually a developer bought it and decided to only put 8 in, you know, and the rest of the property was a conservation easement. But they did it because they needed to survive. And so it's something to keep your eye on. But we were, and before you came in, we were talking about parcels that could end off as 8-30G and everything like that. And I was explaining that in the Affordable Housing Committee that we did, we were identifying parcels that were developable along, not that that's where it had to go, developable along infrastructure. You just do the infrastructure line. And in fact, you know, even though, what did you say, that's Beecher, that's 27 Beecher, whatever it is, even though that was on it, we never identified it, you know what I mean? That was a large parcel, but it was owned, it was in a family. And then I was telling them, I'm coming here tonight, and I turn on Beecher, I live on Rimmon, I turn on Beecher, and I'm driving down, and there's a new for sale sign, said, house, barn, and 7 acres. And, you know, again, it's on Beecher, which means it has sewer, it has water,
Yes, yeah.
access to the two, and it was just like, okay, you know, that's a temptation for somebody to do that. We don't want them to do that. We would prefer they go into areas that we believe are more appropriate for it. I mean, that's an end goal. We would rather attract them out to that. But like the trust funds and everything like that, those are 100% affordable, you know. Usually the housing trusts, at least in the 2 that I've looked at, are for 100% affordable units like that.
Well, yeah.
But they can be easily used for somebody, smaller units. I don't see any reason why they couldn't. And similar with the tax incentives.
Yeah, we're trying to see where, I mean, where is it that we can offer the leverage, right, of some funding, whether it's a tax incentive, tax break, or whether it's some funding that's provided through a trust fund that helps to incentivize people to build mostly or 100% affordable.
Right.
And on a scale that's, you know, compatible, so it can be dispersed, as Kathy suggested, not just in one particular place. So I think that that's what we're looking for, and we don't have yet where the money would come from the
Yeah.
trust fund, but I think if you create a fund, people can make donations, we could potentially divert some fees of some kind into that. But we need to set it up first,
Yeah.
legally.
I have a question about the CDBG money. Is there do we still have any kind of money left from?
So the person who was running that was Pat Crisco, when it was set up 20 plus years ago. So I'd go ask her. And at the time we got them grants through HUD, as I remember. And we would get a pot of money, it was 300,000 or so, and then we would disperse it out to people who needed it, and then liens would be put on their homes eventually. And I think during my tenure as first selectman, we got it twice, but I don't know whether it's been continuing or not, so I'd ask Pat.
When some more money come back into it when those houses are
Eventually it does, but Pat would be the one who I would go to first to ask her.
I don't think it's been recapitalized for a long time since.
Yeah, so
It
it
hasn't been
makes,
recapitalized.
we had the advantage that a gentleman came to us and he helped, he helped to set up the grant application. And so the grant application came and we managed to get, twice we got, you know, these pots of money. I can't remember, Pat might remember, she should have the records.
Right, you could build in it was probably the administrator of the CDBG. You could build that into the CDBG grant, so you have an administrator of the CDBG built into the grant. And it's probably somebody who does that. There's a lot of, you know, consultants, CDBG administrators that would help you set that up, and then they'll administer it for you.
This is separate.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
talk to Pat, she should have all the records, so.
Yeah, there's one of those grants that they used to have for commercial properties that they ended. You know, when you get
This
the
was
money.
for houses,
Yeah,
though.
this was for, yeah, there's a
It
separate one
was
for
houses, yeah,
residential.
And it was a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
really was, great.
Well, another thing we talked about quite a lot in the past is the issue of excess ecclesiastical land. I know some individual faith-based organizations in town have already discussed it on their own. And the problem is if you don't have an entree, you know exactly who do you talk to and how do you do it. So I was very interested to notice that there's an organization called Yes in God's Backyard that does this. And I thought maybe if somebody wanted to pursue this, one thing you could do is to reach out to that organization and see if they could assist with making the connections and and the arguments and so forth. So that's another approach we could
Yeah,
So,
certainly, because we have the religious properties that could potentially
yeah.
be
do. As I
used.
said, some of them have been discussed, and obviously they haven't
Yeah.
decided to do that, but.
Okay, and if you can help, I'd like to look at the New Canaan one. I can email around the trust fund for Stanford, which of course is a big city.
I can get some information.
Yeah, and that's good that we would take a look at that.
That'd be great on Guilford too, you mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that'd be great. Thank
Isn't
you
there
very
much.
much.
like a central resource, I think, for partnerships for strong communities or someplace like that?
They may
you can
have
call?
it, but we also want to look to the SCROG to see whether they have any, connections with respect to any of the towns and how they're managed.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is how they're funded. You know, you're not talking about, you're talking about an amount of money that is able to sustain the trust fund. You know what I mean? And so if you're going to be assisting these people, I'm sure it involves grants, maybe some low-interest loans and everything like that, but you still need a steady flow of
Right,
money
so
to come in.
that's
Yeah.
why I mentioned that number one, the town can accept donations. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, the Resident Assistance Fund or whatever it's called now, you can make a donation to
Yeah.
it. And then there's, and it's tax deductible. And then you can, if you set up this fund, the trust fund, people would be able to make tax deductible donations. But there's also the possibility of, as I said, diverting something from the building permit
Yeah.
world, right, of fees.
Yeah,
We just,
yeah,
so we just
that's
actually just are talking, I don't know if we approved it or not, but a new fee that would help our coffers, but eventually could be in terms of just general coffers of the town, but maybe if we had a trust fund, we could decide as a board of selectmen to divert those funds into the trust fund. It wouldn't be lots of money, but it would be something.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about that. For small towns like ours, the amount of money that's generated by the amount of building that gets done over a certain period of time really isn't sufficient for the need. So you have to come up with a variety of different.
Sure you do.
Right.
Sure you do. Yeah. that's the way it works.
On the tax incentive thing, the one thing I will try to take a look at is I do know that usually that's generated down from the legislature as to whether or not you're a town that's allowed to give certain tax incentives. Now, I'm thinking more along the lines of the Ansonias and Derbys of the world, you know, where they, where they can give, and they have given to developers, you know, tax incentives. And a couple of developers I've worked in those things, they get what is called tax stabilization, which are different. Those are on larger projects. It's an interesting question, and I will look into it, and obviously the town attorney can look into it, as to whether or not you can actually give tax incentives to an individual homeowner in that situation, because as we saw in the controversy over the former mayor of New Britain, where she said, I can't interfere with taxes at all. I've had to, when somebody comes and says, well, can't they waive the interest, because I'm way behind on my taxes? No, they can't.
Well, but
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
different.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
like, just like we offer we offer income-based programs, senior-based programs.
Those
We
are
offer disability.
statutory, and that's the key. So we have to
Right.
find out whether or not
Right.
we are covered in Woodbridge with some statutory-based authority to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's a great idea to offer it to the...
And if we aren't, then we go to our legislators next year and
Yeah,
say, why can't
yeah.
we do this?
Yeah.
And ask them to work on it.
Certainly, they're
But
busy with
we'd
enough
like to-
housing. I think that, and that's a great way to incentivize
Yeah,
the housing.
yes, I think it would
And,
make a difference, not just.
I don't think there's anything in the Golden Girls, this is, by the way, if you want a copy of the Golden Girls, the ADU, the new ADU statute.
Oh, okay.
That passed out of committee.
But it's not actually
Uh,
been adopted by the,
As far as I know, it may have been adopted by the House, I'm not sure, or it's
Okay.
coming in for a vote in the House.
okay,
But it came out of committee.
okay. Well, you condo it now. I'll wait to see where the legislature actually acts on it.
Right, okay.
They've got 3 weeks left or
Right,
something.
yeah.
But,
Okay.
but thank you all for your work.
No problem.
I appreciate
Thank
it
you.
very much.
Okay.
And appreciate yours.
I'm gonna, 6, we really had some discussions already on it briefly. Staff and budget considerations, public participation, and coordination with the award bridge. That was part of our presentation anyway, so there's no point. In item 8, recommendations to TPZ concerning the text amendments, which are on July 1st, which involve the 2 to 9 units in a commercial zone, and why am I drawing a blank on the second thing? There are two statutory changes.
Elaine will tell you.
Yeah, well, Elaine, you went to the meeting, so.
Yeah, that was quite a meeting. So I drew from, after watching it again and scribbling lots and lots of notes, I thought, well, that's not good. So Mary was helpful. Today we worked on just sort of.
Because I watched the meeting and scribbled lots and lots of
We
notes.
we summarized, but I'm going to,
Did
I'm
anybody else
going.
watch the meeting on television? Okay.
Yeah, okay, I was
I
gonna say.
gotta find
if-
out how to do that.
If everybody's seen it, I don't have to do this, but if you haven't, this is my summary. The purpose of the combined Board of Selectmen and TPZ meeting on March 25th was to get input from relevant commissions concerning HB 8002, now called 25-1, specifically about possible necessary zoning changes that will be required by July 1st. We talked quite a bit about that at our last meeting. After each board or commission or committee introduced themselves and their roles, both our town planner and town attorney proceeded to explain and answer questions about the meaning of summary review and the consideration of newly acquired paths for approval of certain projects. Mr. D'Amato, the TPZ town planner, explained the term summary review, noting that the immediate focus of the TPZ should be on identifying standards for summary review, primarily meaning that there is no discretionary component. Standards for summary review can only require a yes or no response. Did we talk about this last month? I didn't.
That's what it is.
The new zoning regulations must allow 2 to 9 residential units on any town land zoned for either commercial or mixed use by summary review with similar, I think they said with similar permission suggested for all residential zones for the 2 to 9.
Possible, yeah.
Is, okay.
So-
A second group was described by Mr. D'Amato as mixed-use development with no unit limit and also requiring only summary review. I'm looking at Kathy to fact check me on these things because she knows
I think
them.
that's right, yeah. 'Cause I
Does that
watched
sound right?
I watched it.
Oh, you
yeah.
watched it?
Yeah.
He further noted that the town can still regulate what the building looks like, how it's built, how it fits into existing environment, and Amy Morella reminded the group that these design guidelines were available, they're available in a 2023 placemaker study, which is available online. The third part of the meeting centered around the parts of the law pertaining to housing. Questions in focus revolved around how best to incorporate affordable housing mandates in the context of the new regulations. The ability of BOS and TPZ to incentivize specific housing types through ordinances, the ability to incorporate a requirement to build affordable units as part of a development, and the ability to weight applications. I think it was Andrea that brought up weighting applications, right? The need to grow our economic base as well as provide much needed housing at various price ranges, and the need to ensure that the town take a comprehensive long-range view of how we want our town to grow and to look, rather than embracing a piecemeal or patchwork approach, which I think everybody embraced. It's important. While there were many important issues raised, including a path to groundless growth through multi-unit development, commissions and committees are still in need of clear, actionable steps. Who does what, and how do we work in a collaborative manner to avoid past mistakes or the feeling that we're working in silos? Mr. D'Amato referred to a 3-tiered approach, and Mika recommended us for the need to increase affordable housing using a balanced approach and being mindful of seeking a moratorium to avoid further 30-G applications. And, it was interesting. It was a lively exchange of conversation, but I really walked away with the sense that people long for a long-term visionary view of how it's all going to work together and avoid just a hodgepodge approach to building, and a sense that we needed to collaborate, that everybody involved in housing needed to work together, which has been sorely absent in the last few years. So,
Well,
anything else that?
thank you, Elaine. I think that segues into the next thing about, for anybody that attended the CLEAR webinar, which was last week. The panel was very knowledgeable panel. Mark Brantz,
Nick.
Melissa, well, I'm trying to blank there. Then there was the assistant planner in Fairfield. There were some very high-level people. And one thing that came out of it is, you can read the statute, but nobody really understands what July 1st is going to be. You know what I mean? In other words, does it overrule the towns? And the biggest problem is a town that doesn't take advantage, of getting the regulations in order. You mentioned the issue of, okay, you got to define summer review. One of the questions in the seminar that was asked was whether or not, well, first of all, when the seminar material is available, Mark Brantz drafted a statute, which I will try to get my hands on as quickly as possible and get it up to TPZ. Again, plagiarism is no problem in land use. We plagiarize each other's regulations all the time, and he's coming down with his suggestion. For example, question was asked, how does it impact historical area? How does it impact an architectural review board? And it was pretty consensus that architectural review boards are not going to fit into summary review. You will set up some standards. Does summary review allow you to set up density requirements? And there was not a definitive answer on it.
Wait, summary review allows you to set up density? Or
does it allow you to set up density, or
I think
are you just controlled by the 2 to 9? Can you shrink the 2 to 9? What can you do? Are you looking at lot size? What are you looking at? So, for example, there is a 5-unit, 2-bedroom, townhouse style, meaning multiple floors, that I have in Shelton. It's in a PDD commercial zone. So, I'm having trouble because of some issues related to sewer connection and everything like that. But from a zoning perspective, I said to my client, well, we can just wait till July 1st instead of having to go through the amending process of the plan development district, because you fit on it. That's 5 units, 2 bedrooms each, on 0.7 acres. No, less than that, 0.5 acres, I think it is, something like that. You know what I mean? It fits in there because of the architect is from Milford, John Woodcall. He drafted it, set it up, and is able to address the parking. But focusing it on Woodbridge, we were having a conversation that, part of one of the big things, Dave and I were talking before when we first got here, one of the things in our plan was to encourage, from 2022, was to encourage apartments above retail. So I had a conversation, I'm sorry, what did you say their name was, the
Urbana.
Urbana. I had a conversation with the wife, she said, sure, we'd be glad to put apartments up above those stores. I don't know how many, now, if she could fit, I don't know what would go there, obviously, not an architect, but the bottom line is, that would seem to me to qualify immediately for 2 to 9 units. So if you can fit, 8 or 9 units up above there, whatever you want to do, 1 bedrooms, 2s, studios, that should qualify and be able to do there. And the whole point is, there's an abundance of parking, and we have to remember residential, commercial, their parking peaks are opposite each other. Residential is 9:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m., is the general considered peak under the ITE, and residential obviously during the day. Commercial during the day. So that's a thing that they may be able to do. There's just happens to be an awful lot of questions as to how to implement the section. But I think Woodbridge can come up with a pretty good answer, and hopefully this will motivate them to accelerate the housing over commercial.
So part of the discussion was how much really has to happen before July 1st. We may be already set up to not have to do much. Nobody seemed to know the answer.
No,
to
the
that.
discussion was very wide-ranging, and it is a very wide-ranging subject, so it's obvious that you go in this direction or this direction, and lots of other directions that don't necessarily focus on 2 to 9, housing units. Is that okay, and should they look like? And multi-use properties, is that going to be okay in all of the districts that it would apply to? That kind of analysis is what really needs to happen before July 1st. And the discussions, which are just emblematic of the kinds of things that these commissions really should be talking about to each other, they're pretty, high, wide, and handsome. So I came away from the meeting wanting to know what we were supposed to do, exactly what this commission should do for them. What are we supposed to talk about, and what are we supposed to
There's very
do
little
about?
this commission can do between now and
July 1st.
June 30th. At the end of the
Any
day.
commission can do
Yeah,
that.
right. They have to draft it. However,
But who's they? Who
the
has-
Planning and Zoning Commission, they have to draft the regulation. They're the only ones that can draft the regulation and approve the regulation. The question in the clear thing was, what happens on July 1st? Does that regulation supersede so that if I walk in on July 1st and they haven't changed the reg, can I say, I want this 2 to 9, I want this 7-unit proposal
I
on
believe
this
you
piece
can.
of
Well,
land?
that was
Yes.
actually addressed during the EDC meeting that took place, the Economic Development Commission meeting. When they had their meeting, their first meeting, they're going to have another special meeting to discuss just this topic, I think Tuesday night. But their initial meeting, they had the advantage of Mike Devano's partner in typing.
John Kaczynski.
Yeah. He was online, so he was there to answer these kinds of questions, and the conversation covered a lot of these
Well, he's a
issues.
planner, but even John, not even.
Including
one-
affordable housing, whether we could ask for affordable housing as a requirement, or use it as an incentive. So there was quite a bit of discussion on that subject that was apropos to what we're doing.
I don't think the statute allows a town to say, you can do the 2 to 9, but you've got to give us 80% affordable. You've got to give us 20%, whatever, or
Yeah,
30%.
I was surprised when
Yeah.
they said yes, he thought they could. He said it all depends on the market. If you have such a strong market that you can do that, and that a developer can do that with an economic,
Yeah,
but I don't know whether we do.
Yeah, I think our point would be, and I really do, is to communicate to the TPZ, we're not necessarily the successor but to please look at the housing plan done in 2022, where we identify the fact that you should have housing above retail.
Well,
And
you'll be
we
very
identify
proud of
that.
us.
There's, for example,
You'll be proud of us. We said that at the meeting.
huh?
You'll be proud of us. We already said that.
Said that at the meeting, yeah, we already
We knew you
suggested
wanted
it.
us to.
It's not just that one building, I mean, somebody pointed out the professional building,
On Litchfield Turnpike?
on
that
Litchfield
one?
Turnpike, which I think is only one story, I'm not sure if it's 2 stories. I really don't, but the question was asked way back when, whether or not you could, whatever it was structurally, architecturally, I don't know, structurally sound enough to put a second floor on, or to add to the second floor to increase apartments over the professional
This
offices.
is the block building down on Litchfield Turnpike.
No, this is,
One story.
as you're coming down Litchfield, just before you hang the left on Bradley, there's a building on the right that's a professional building. It actually has FedEx boxes in front of it. And it's a professional, it's a white building, basically, before you get to Wells Fargo.
Yes, there are
I
2
can't,
buildings
I
there.
can't picture it.
Yeah, I mean, it's set back.
They're low white buildings, 1 story, and they've got, you know, a number of different professional offices. They've got visiting nurses in there. They've
Yeah.
got, my son's optometrist in there, you know, a
We've
lot
got
of,
stuff behind
Aren't
Wells
those
Fargo
there's a
too.
Aren't those
psychiatrist in
two-story
there.
buildings?
It's,
I can't picture.
down
I'm not
in-
sure.
I think there's a peak roof, but I'm not sure, you know what I
Might be
mean?
new.
Is that where
That
Bud
might be
Priest
new,
used to be?
Huh?
Is that where Bud Priest used to be?
I'm not sure, I
Oh,
don't know,
I'm
but,
on the wrong road.
Huh?
Yeah.
yeah.
Over on Amity Road,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of.
But I mean, those are, the people identified that, people even talked about the area down off of, behind the bank, where Woodbridge Social was, and those area again, they're 1 floor. But I think some of them are 2 floor, or some of them, huh?
Selden Avenue, you mean?
Yeah, Sylvan Avenue, and these were the kind of conversations, but from a very simple perspective, you know, regardless of whether it's because of the statute or this, it's something they should really consider, because like I said, at least the one landlord I talked to, yeah, we'd be glad to do that.
This was considered a number of years ago, and it never went anywhere.
We've
I'm
all
not
been
sure.
telling this, it's what everybody's saying right now, we're in favor of this, we're in favor of this, you
Yeah,
have to
it
wonder
never
why it
went
hasn't
anywhere.
happened.
It seems like a no-brainer, and
Yeah.
yet, what Mary and I were particularly frustrated about was when we left, as I said, who is supposed to do what? Who takes the lead? You know, how
What do
do
they
you
do?
actually move
It's
forward?
TPZ, no, there's such a short period of time. You gotta remember, to change the zoning regulation, even if TPZ is gonna do it itself, it still has a notice of public hearing, have to have a public hearing, and then set an effective date. And you go into a public hearing with a draft regulation. So I'm hoping right now, since they've hired one of the best planning companies, Tisch, you know, I mean, with Gutkowski and, who's the other fellow working with them?
Tomorrow.
DeMont. Since they've hired them, I would hope that they're getting a draft from them to, you know, which will at least keep us ahead. But I mean, from a practical perspective, that draft has, in my opinion, from our perspective, I think that draft has to allow housing above retail in the community, you know, in the downtown, you know, whatever you want to, the commercial area,
Yeah, the village district.
the village district, yeah.
So I'm starting to get a picture of what maybe we could give to them as a recommendation to, beginning with, you know, pointing out that we have had this as this, again, that we had this as one of our 6 recommendations from the housing plan. But if you look at the zoning map and look at the areas that we can, I don't really understand this. Elaine and I were looking at it and we were trying to understand. You need to know what the regulations are for each one of those zones, and of course, it's not on the map, so you're operating without a sufficient amount of information. But one of the places that is now going to be subject to this, that I've always thought, why didn't they put housing out there? Was in that industrial area that's
Research.
across the bridge,
Yep.
you know,
There's
underneath.
also, there's, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to know why that wasn't zoned for mixed use. We only have 2 zones that apply, I think, now. I don't understand the
For
zoning,
what?
so I shouldn't even
What
speak
area
of
are you
it.
talking about there?
You know where Teddy's Auto Body is?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
So you go
searched
across that
on it.
little
Oh,
bridge
yeah.
and you know, there's the animal
Yeah.
thing here and then there's this, all this other
Yeah.
stuff that's back in there. There's still a lot of land.
Yep. Where the dog
That's
pound.
free
But Mary,
there.
weren't you
So
told it had to do with egress, that there was only
Chris told
one?
me it was because they didn't want housing back there for fear of, this was quite some years ago, for fear of flooding. If they got flooding, then
Yeah.
people wouldn't be able to get
Yeah.
out in time. So
There- I
I
think-
don't know whether
The
that's
No,
still.
I
flooding
think-
issue has been addressed though.
I thought so.
Yeah,
it was,
I
yes.
thought so,
that was,
yeah.
there was, that was an area that was in the FEMA.
But she actually said
Fine.
it after it was addressed, so I don't know if there weren't
Yeah.
other things.
And the multiple, you know, there's, people don't like, I obviously, I drive home from Derby to Woodbridge, so I don't traverse the
The
Litchfield Turnpike or whatever. The other night, when my son and granddaughter were here from LA a couple weeks ago, before they were leaving, we were gonna get together and we were gonna grab a bite at Katz's. So they drove up from, they were staying at a house in Westport, and they drove up to our house, and then we both left the house at the same time. They got a little bit of a head start. I ended up having to deal with the Litchfield Turnpike traffic. And what do you call it? And it had been a while since I did that. And I know that there's an issue because my son lives on Merritt. The other son, not him, obviously he's in LA, my other son lives on Merritt. And you have that area, that road that would have taken you around and go on is blocked off. So you can't take your car through. You're not supposed to be able to go all the way through. And I think they did that because so many people were cutting off of Litchfield Turnpike, cutting through those houses, going down the, whatever it is, down to Merritt and then coming out at the light and trying to,
Oh, yeah,
save some
I know what you
time.
mean, I know what you mean.
So there was an issue of access, but that can easily be resolved. And I do think, you said, that I do think when they did the tremendous amount of work on the bridge
On the bridge,
and on the water, they took care of the flooding issue, but I'm not sure where the FEMA, because that was, I think, where the issue was where the FEMA floodplain was in that area. But yeah, you're right, that's an area that could potentially be developed.
But the other thing that I thought maybe we should emphasize, and Economic Development Commission is planning to do this too, is that we shouldn't be concentrating all our attention or all our ideas for multifamily housing in this area, that we really need to keep looking at the whole town.
Oh, no,
Both for
we do, but-
economic development.
yeah.
So I don't think it would be inappropriate for us to mention that in our recommendations to them too.
But for the ones that are coming up, I don't think we need to make it right now. But for the ones that are coming up and they have to do by June 30th, I mean, the simplest thing, the commercial zone is downtown, is the Village District. That's where the commercial zone is. That's where this applies to. And 2 to 9 is gonna be a matter of right. How that is formulated, they have to do it, so we worry about that.
But also,
Yeah.
the second bucket that he talked about, the mixed-use developments with no unit limit, right?
Yeah, no.
Well,
So,
Yeah,
so
it's-
that
No,
raised a lot of.
that is not by summary process.
No, it is.
Mhm.
It is.
Summary review, but it has, they're not required to pass that regulation. They're not required to pass that. They can choose, that's a may, pass a regulation that allows it in mixed-use areas
Oh,
for, as opposed to shall pass.
big difference, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the unlimited units, the shall applies to the 2 to 9.
Right.
And you're not gonna get big developers coming in and doing 2 to 9, but you may get smaller developers, smaller builders coming in and saying, hey, I can do that, or I can convert what's up above to those units, so you may get them.
So are you
The-
recommending that we wait until next month to actually create our
Well,
recommendations? for
what
them?
what I would like to do is, I'm gonna reach out to either Gutkowski or D'Amato and say, okay, where are you guys going? We wanna, I don't wanna make a recommendation in a vacuum. I wanna find out where they're going and saying, okay, fine, well, our recommendation is, as the committee, we will formalize this, is that you adopt, you look at the 2022 plan, and you look at the ability to put housing over retail in the downtown, and how is that fitting into what you're doing?
I think we'll all get a lot more information at the next TPC meeting, which is this week.
This week?
I think it's this week. They're having a special meeting.
This week?
I think.
I thought they normally meet on Monday nights.
Tomorrow.
No, it's a
It's tomorrow.
special meeting.
Oh, it's tomorrow?
Tomorrow, plain
It's
and
a
simple?
special meeting.
6:30.
Yeah, well, I'll be in Derby
Yeah.
battling over
So we could,
Griffin Hospital's
we could easily.
generators.
I mean, both,
Or actually CPUCH. Actually, it's gonna provide green power to the hospital in Griffin for 70% of the hospital's power. These new fangled things, way above my technical expertise, but the zoning board's giving them issues on it, so that's where I will be tomorrow
We
night.
could watch it.
if you think we could
Yeah.
just sort of wait until after then, because then we'll
Yeah.
get a better.
Oh, yeah, we'll get a better
idea.
idea.
The planners are
We'll
telling
get a better
you,
idea of
we wouldn't
where they're
take
going.
the
I mean,
planners' time.
the recommendation is a pretty simple
It's pretty simple.
recommendation.
Yeah.
All right, so that's, we will wait, and also, the clear video, I guess they said everything would be ready and the materials, but that was also very informative.
I have
Um,
that link if you guys want.
Yeah,
Shall I send
You
the
send
link
that?
out?
yeah, that was well worth it. I'm gonna skip quickly, because it's getting late, 2 hours. The voice program, that's the thing with the high school student.
Okay.
And we were invited, I think, do we have any issue with saying that we're willing if they want to have somebody to sit on our board?
No, I think that would be.
Then I'll just
Very
report
nice.
back, that's not a vote thing, that's just, I'll report back to them that we would certainly, as a commission, we would allow that doing. Upcoming topics and possible speakers, I'm gonna still work hard to get somebody from SCROG here who is involved in the regional housing growth plan. So that we can really understand how they're gonna help us. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I think we're not gonna be in the budget for anything this year. And
no.
so we're gonna get money from
I
them.
have a suggestion for
Yeah.
speakers. I don't know if any of you drive into New Haven, but on the old Legion Avenue, the present South Frontage Road, there's a public housing development
Yeah.
called Curtis Cofield
Yeah.
2, which is it's a city public housing development that was built with non-profit funding, plus a lot of other funding here.
I think that had some funding from the New
From
Haven,
the state.
the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Yeah, it's got
And the
it's
state.
got a number of different funds
Yeah.
here. Maybe we could have somebody from that development.
You're talking about the development, right when you,
Yeah. that-
right when you turn the corner,
Those
right there,
townhouses. They
are attached units, but with a single-family look.
They're semi-attached, they're like three
Yeah,
or four,
yeah.
three or
Yeah,
four
right.
units. There are 11
Very nice looking.
11 buildings there. That cost $22 million to build 56 units. And they're all affordable.
Yeah,
And they're 1 and 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, and they're gorgeous. And I would like to know how they did that, you know.
well, they got the land. The land was part of the old 34.
Right, that was eminent domain land.
Yeah, that was eminent domain land that was taken by the state, that was gonna, when 34 was gonna be a highway connecting up.
Right. Oak Street.
And then it ended up being parking lots, for Yale, and then the end piece, they took, and turned into that housing, project, 100% affordable. Curtis Cofield, I think his wife
He's
was a
rep-
judge. He was a representative, his wife was a judge. And, yeah, I mean, we could, find it out whether it's, again, for example, there's two things here. And this ties in with that. You mentioned we need to meet with the Economic Development Commission, okay? And we do. And we have to have a really frank discussion with economic development that how does housing generate economic development? Single-family housing can generate economic development. High-density housing is probably the #1 economic development in most towns right now that's stabilized. A project like that, like you're talking about, would be a great project. It's obviously not going to generate any economic development because whatever parcel you put it on, there will be no taxes because it would be a nonprofit. So it would, it's the same thing with the religious sites. When you put it on the religious sites, unless they're running it for profit, if they're running it solely at 100% affordable, they're going to be exempt from real estate taxes. And so, but on the other hand, there was one parcel identified by Christine that is supposedly a parcel of, and Kathy or Mary, and they might remember, like 3 acres or 3 to 5 acres behind where Amity Physical Therapy is, in the area back there, if you're down that road. There was a parcel back there that they identified.
It's at the foot of the hill.
Yeah, right. And you know what I mean? If somebody were interested, or if there were funding to be able to do that, and the reason that's good is if you're going to have a project like that, you need to be near public transportation. And there is public transportation that comes into the downtown. Not enough of it. It would have to increase it more. The other thing is, given what's happened to churches and everything like that, what is going to happen to the parcel on which the mother church is for Our Lady of the Assumption?
Yes.
What's going to happen to that? I mean, if they don't do anything with it, it's going to end up being part of, it may end up being bought by Toll Brothers and become part of their building and selling those houses faster than I could ever imagine. But it abuts that project, you know what I mean? But how long are they going to keep that as part of the, you know?
Is there any way the town can control those properties, buying those properties and then reselling them to developers?
Buy, yes, is the key word. You cannot take them by eminent domain.
No.
If the town purchases the property and the town functions as a regular purchaser, then it's their property and they can do with it what they want. They can sell it to a developer. So, for example,
with caveats and limitations, what the developer will do to that property.
Well, the town, once you're the owner, you can put whatever restrictions on you want on the land records, and you can sell it to them and sell it to them with a caveat, with a restriction.
Or lease it.
Huh?
Or lease it to them?
Leasing is a little more difficult. Ground leases for residential
That's what land trust can do, the community land trust, right? Am I right about that? That's
Yeah,
what
I mean,
they
there are,
acquire land,
leasing
and
creates a
then
little more difficult
They issue a
situation.
land lease, they continue to have own the property, but not the building or the property, and then they can sell the property, which can continue to be sold for a fraction of what it would usually have to be sold for, because the land, you're not buying and selling the land underneath.
Yeah.
So that's how that works.
Kathy, who owned the land where Toll Brothers built? Was that town-owned land or that?
No, that was private.
That was private.
Yeah, no, I was gonna add you're talking about the mother church. We identified that parcel as a potential parcel, thinking that they may be interested in development. And LISC is very good at, partnering with nonprofit, with faith-based organizations. And they did reach out to the, I guess they're part of the Archdiocese of Hartford, and they did reach out, and they weren't interested in doing anything at the moment, so.
At the moment is the key element.
Yeah, but there was a reach out to see whether or not they would consider doing something, because they were interested in also preserving the mother church in terms of a historic, site, and really creating, a housing development, but keeping the church intact in some way to, preserve the historic value of the church.
But they weren't interested.
No, they weren't interested at the moment.
at the moment.
That was one of the churches I was referring to that,
Yeah. You know, I mean, if we can find a spot, what a town like Woodbridge has to do is to balance taking property off the tax rolls with putting property on the tax rolls. And it becomes an issue. I think I gave you the example that a simple, on 3 to 4 acres, a simple 90 unit with Woodbridge's tax records, a simple 90 unit apartment complex of 1 and 2 bedroom houses would generate about $500,000 in taxes.
Yeah, but it would
I
cost
think the economic.
$2.5 million for services. So
No,
No.
there's no, honestly, there's empirical evidence out the yin yang that hasn't happened.
The empirical evidence does not reflect what's happening in Woodbridge.
Oh,
I
well,
don't
I mean,
that's
it's
tough.
Kansas and Nebraska.
No. I'm talking about the empirical evidence in Westport, Wilton, New Canaan. You go right up the line, Shelton, any one of the towns. I mean, you can, first of all, and I think this is one thing that we've got to educate people on.
Right.
You first of all, the idea that you're going to build an apartment like that and there's going to be 11 family members living in it is absurd. That doesn't happen.
But 1 or 2 children in each apartment.
No, that's not what it should. The 89 unit one I'm talking about, I think has 6 kids.
You're talking about Shelton.
6 kids, yeah,
The Shelton is not Woodbridge. People come to Woodbridge for the schools.
right.
And they
They're
bring
not,
kids with them.
they're not gonna be able to do what they do in the rental houses on the flats, which is rent a house, sometimes 2 families, and sometimes have 5, 6 kids
Yeah.
to go to the school system.
I'm
Won't
not
be able to
talking
do that.
about 5 or 6 kids. 1 kid in 1 apartment is gonna cost you $25,000. Why are you shaking your head?
Because,
Those are the numbers. You look at
because
it.
I will tell you, I'll bring somebody in to tell you, the
That's what it
phoniest,
costs.
yeah,
My street turned over the last couple of years. There was only 1 house that went to a family with no children.
You know what, I agree. You should see our street. It's loaded with children.
Nobody comes to Woodbridge to retire. Maybe you live in Woodbridge and you retire in Woodbridge, but you don't move to Woodbridge to retire. You come
Right,
for the school
so the
system.
way a town
but that-
grows and
that's-
thrives is with young families.
I'm not saying it's a problem, I'm saying that's the reality. So you put up a 90-unit building, it's gonna cost you much more in services than you get in taxes.
I will tell you this, we ought to have one of the people we need to have speak to us is the planner they've hired, either Gatkowski or D'Amato. And they will tell you, these are the people that do the studies. And, I mean, to say that our towns, our school system, which is a very good school system, is better than the school system in Wilton or Westport or New Canaan or Darien,
They're not,
they're not, huh? We're not.
No.
We're not on that level.
not even top 10 anymore.
Right, exactly. So, and I know that we could singularly say that Beecher is probably one of the finer elementary schools, you know what I mean, because of its system, but those other towns have similar. When you have the 1 and 2 bedrooms, the kids that you have there the most are 0 to 5. That's what you have. And what happens in a lot of those towns is that those people will then move out. Some of them, there will be kids. In the 89 unit 1, there's 6 kids. There are 6 kids. So you have somebody that gets a divorce and moves into one of the apartments. There's a kid there. But they're generating $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in taxes, looking at our mill rate. What the developer that's coming into Woodbridge is going to look for, and what Amy talked about, tax incentives, didn't mention that what they're going to look for is a tax stabilization agreement. That's what most of them are going to look for, because we have relatively high tax rate. So they're going to want a tax stabilization that says for 5 years, 7 years, whatever, my taxes are going to be stabilized. But they are the things that you can go down to Lower Fairfield County. There's an abundance of evidence as to what they generate. Now, I don't know what Woodbridge's numbers are, but there's a lot of towns battling issues. The fact that enrollment in Shelton, the enrollment's gone down, the total enrollment has gone down 1,000 in 10 years. and the mayor is acting stupid about it and saying that we're not gonna fund, we're gonna zero fund, which is ridiculous. Woodbridge, when you look at the numbers, I know that Bethany's numbers have gone down. Orange, I think Woodbridge's numbers have remained stable, and Orange numbers have gone down.
Woodbridge is now a larger percentage of the budget for the Amity district than it has been, because relative to the other town,
yeah.
we have more students.
Yeah, right,
So
yeah.
we're bearing the
Right,
cost.
but I mean, and as good, and both my grandson playing on the baseball team, he's a senior this year, he's gonna graduate. My granddaughter's in New York working in finance, she graduated from here in UConn, you know what I mean? They both did very well. But it hasn't been proven out. When you look at, like I said, the Wiltons, the New Canaans, even Fairfield, which has some very good schools, they're not generated from those apartments. Now, you make one change, you have the apartments come in as they did in Trumbull, where over I think 30-40% of the apartments were 3 bedrooms. Now you change the formula completely.
Yeah.
Now you're going to get
Some kids.
many more children.
Yeah.
Many more children. And the one in Trumbull they did, and then after that point, then Trumbull only approved 1 and 2 bedroom.
The census in Beecher Road School keeps going up.
Yeah.
It's approaching 900 now.
Well, one of the reasons is because of streets turning over, right?
Yeah.
There are lots of older people, and when they leave a 4 or 5 bedroom home,
Correct.
who's gonna
Well, I mean-
go? A small.
I mean,
young
we can
couple?
go, and this
No.
is something for housing purposes, this is something we need to do that. We can go to the Board of Ed and identify, have them identify where the school, where the children are from. And I know from comments of Greg and other people who, that there are families, there was one family, I know, that they rented in the flats somewhere, and, one of those duplexes along Litchfield, somewhere there. And there were 2 families. They rented it because when you have a rental like that, there's no restrictions. When you have a rental in an apartment, there's a restriction on the lease. They had no restriction. They didn't care what they were paying. They were paying a chunk, but there were 2 families living there, and there were 6 kids in one of the units, one of the 2 units. Okay, you're not going to have that in these higher density apartment complexes. That's not going to happen.
So
There will be some
So you
kids.
say.
Well,
I'm
but
guessing.
why wouldn't you
this
then done in Wilton? Why wouldn't Wilton has an excellent school system.
I
Westport.
don't know. I
Staples.
can't.
They don't-
imagine that
they
this
don't-
is that.
This is
They're
not for right now, but I'm curious to know why there isn't an occupancy limit on those units too. The reason that.
There's
you
no
have
occupancy
kids
limits
on-
out. There's no occupancy.
There's no real definition of family. What constitutes
Right.
a family?
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I remember
exactly
David
it.
Fink saying, when we were having, this is a very common discussion that goes on, we've had it many times. And I remember asking, if there was somebody else asked him, the same question, how do you limit the number of people who you can pack into a studio apartment or 1-bedroom apartment and so forth? He goes, well, there's an occupancy limit. It's your fire department
Whoa,
that's gonna keep
okay,
it.
well, wait a second.
So what
Studio
would-
or 1-bedroom apartment and a 1-year lease, you're gonna have a lease that specifies who's gonna be in there. That's one thing different. I'm talking about a multifamily house, a 2-family house, or a 3-family house, where you're talking about, you may be talking about the same 900 square feet, okay? But that landlord is not going to limit, unless there is a problem, he'll just sign a lease with somebody, you know what I mean? And the family, and all of a sudden, another family moves in, as long as that landlord is getting, because there's usually no one to complain. If there's a complaint, there will be a problem. They enforce it much more strictly in the apartments, you know what I mean? I mean, you're not gonna go into the Mark. If somebody built a thing like the Mark here, you're never gonna have. The Mark has, which is now you're talking about really expensive rents, and you're talking about a pool, a cabana, 6,000 square foot clubhouse and everything like that. Somebody built something that 228 units, over 45% of the occupants of that look a lot like us. You know what I mean? And they
Old
are
and decrepit.
old and decrepit.
I was gonna say, what's that?
Howard Rappaport, he said it when
Sorry.
yeah.
Some of us, some of us.
when they had the,
Not very
women
gentlemanly of you.
except for the ladies, when they had the grand opening, Howard said to me, he said, Dominic, you're gonna be shocked. He said, you would think we were a 55 and over community. And it turns out, it's very, and it would be popular in Woodbridge, that it's becoming much more popular for the seniors to rent in a mixed age group type apartment, and then go spend their January, February, March in Florida,
Mhm.
and not have to worry about taking care of the house, not have to worry about taking care of the, you know what I mean? There's just an apartment complex that's being taken care of for them. So that's becoming very popular. This is at the upper end. I mean, the mark, it's $3,800 for a 2-bedroom, unit and stuff like that. But even the mark has very few kids. 228 units, I think the number of kids are probably in the single digits there. But it's a different complex.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Dominic, I don't mean to
We'll
interrupt
have to
you, but it's
compare
getting
our
high.
Oh, it's getting late, yeah.
And we don't have any charge for the interim between now and next
And they should have the
month. Did you want to start
Go
talking
across
about,
the street.
should
Move up
we
the
start
street.
thinking, are we
Absolutely. I
gonna,
couldn't
is
agree
it
with you.
okay if we do
And I think
Earth
that's the
Day?
difference.
I've sort of set it up so that,
Down
so
in
that we
Cook
can
County,
have a
they're not
table,
next
we
to
can
the
have
main
that stuff
park.
out next
For the
to
movie
conservation,
All right.
and I can kind of help.
We are,
Incentive.
we are.
Hello,
and this-
excuse me, we're discussing
demographic
something.
is-
We're discussing whether to participate in Earth Day or not.
I don't, okay, I have no, we are, and I would really want to, we are an action committee, a commission. In other words, we're gonna have to eventually generate or work with to do the plan. There's no problem with setting up a table. I am not available this weekend.
The problem is I don't
Yeah,
think anybody's
yeah,
around to do
yeah,
it this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there's no problem
I can
setting up
put
a
it out,
table
but I can't.
and encouraging people to, to talk about housing and encourage them to express themselves at this point. But I guess what I'm saying is, we need the public input. We're gonna be doing the public input, either ourselves doing our plan, or most likely doing the regional plan, where we're gonna be getting public input to transmit to the scribe, for instance, and we're gonna be running public events. That doesn't mean we can't go to to the Earth Day and say, hey, there's a housing committee. If you have any inputs, if you have any thoughts on housing, and you have anything, certainly express it to us. And these are some of the things.
Well, I'm a little concerned because, as I mentioned at the last meeting, didn't need to mention it then. There's a lot going on in town right now, a lot of need for information. Mika at that meeting said, please, can you give us more information about 830G? He's being asked questions, and he needs to have ability to answer questions, that kind of thing. So if we wait until Squawk gets its act together, if hires the person, decides how they're gonna outreach and what they're gonna offer and so forth, it'll be months.
Oh,
And we're gonna sit around and do nothing for months?
Okay,
I
no.
don't wanna
The
do that.
appropriate, excuse me, the appropriate person to explain 830G is our town attorney,
Right.
not us.
No.
No, I didn't say us.
Who's the-
We are
who is-
we
who
are
was
the
the-
ones.
who was the town
We are the
attorney?
ones.
The town attorney
Nick,
is.
Nick Belmonte.
Yeah, Nick is,
With a
And-
B.
But,
Yeah, Italian name.
yeah, Nick
Kathy,
Beaumont.
what's his
Nick
name?
Beaumont.
Vermont?
Nick
But-
Lamonti, but we
but-
do have a lot of 8-30G informational
we
sheets from
have,
the
there's a
Partnership
lot,
for Strong Communities.
we
that-
could print
that
it, we
Well,
could post
provide.
Okay.
it. We could have a public meeting and have Nick come and talk, or somebody else come and talk and answer questions. But that kind of thing requires some organization and some planning.
Well, I mean,
And we can't
okay.
do it at these meetings.
All right. We can have, for the explanation of 8-30G, I could probably deliver it from the developer side, because I've done 8-30Gs. Nick has been on the other side. Nick and I sit on the P&Z Section Executive Committee,
Some of
together.
it's just
So I
very
can arrange a
straightforward stuff.
situation where I don't know if
First
the
question,
public needs to be educated on 8-30G.
Yep.
I don't think we need, I'm certain, to be educated on 8-30G. What we need to be educated, what we need, 8-30G simply switches the burden. That's all it does. And there's other sites, but we need to be able to work towards a plan that's going to prevent developers from wanting to use 8-30G. That's what we need to work towards. Our plan has to prevent them from doing that. Our plan has to want them to come in here and voluntarily work with the town and build
So-
affordable housing.
What, you're absolutely right, I don't
Yeah.
disagree with that at all, but we've got long-range plans, and what I'm talking about is, can we talk about some short-range plans for public information, maybe FAQs, maybe, I don't know what, glossaries, help thing, anything that what people need right now. Our first charge was to find out what people are asking about and what they need. We made that charge last month. We talked about having organizing with conservation a program, maybe on ADUs. But we have to step forward with these things. We can't just keep putting them off indefinitely, and so I would like to talk about that.
Okay.
If we're not gonna do it, we're not gonna do it. But I
We
think
are,
that
we
there's
are
a
gonna
real
do
need.
it, but I think one of the important things is we need to wait for the legislative session to end. You don't know how, there are an enormous amount of bills pending before the legislatures that are gonna have effect beyond 25-1, number one. But, yes, we wanna have sessions with the public. We wanna take the public in. I believe we need to coordinate with the other commissions at first, and I will certainly suggest, I mean, the P and Z is having to work on the statute. I mentioned to Mika that we need to have a meeting of all the boards. And I think one of the first steps we need to have is for the Board of Selectmen or somebody to organize a situation where all of the boards meet in a single meeting, whether economic development, planning and zoning, which is Coupa, conservation, Coupa, everybody sits around the table and has a discussion just like we're having with everybody else. And I want to know what they're thinking.
Well, that was what that meeting, what the March 25th meeting was supposed to be like the inaugural
No.
meeting on this, but it got kind of taken over by this other specific.
Well,
stuff.
there was some discussion that it was going to be everybody,
And
but
they
then it
did
was
talk
going
about
to...
opportunity. housing.
Yeah, right. But we need to, I want to find out what everybody else is thinking. I want to find out where they're going. Because there's going to be some differences of opinion, and we need to know what all those differences of opinion are. Across the
We know
board.
what some of the needs are by the public. And so if you value our role as an educator for the public, as a conduit of information for the public, then that's a role that we have to exercise. And that's what I'm trying to suggest, that we plan to exercise that in one or two or
We do.
150 different ways.
Yeah, and if that education is coming from the public, and they can understand it's coming from all the boards. It's coming from all the boards, through us, it's coming from all the boards, we've worked it together, and yes, here are the frequently asked questions. But I don't want to sit, I want to be able to sit around a table with all these other boards and understand what they understand about 8-30G. I want to understand about, what do you understand about,
Well, what are you proposing, like every commission member on, each commission? Everybody in one?
This is what was talked about, that
Yeah.
at some point, there needed to be a meeting of, they were talking about breaking up, but I think, these aren't very large boards, none of them are. We can have a meeting,
Oh, they're pretty large. That room was full of people, and we only had 2 people
From
from
each
each one there. And not every, excuse me for speaking so directly, and not every, one of the other things I learned at this meeting is that not every one of these land use or land use related boards has the same agenda, obviously. So sustainability is not interested in 830G. I mean, no more than any other public person would be.
why wouldn't they be interested in it?
Everybody's interested in 830G, but as a commission, it's not part of their charge or part of their responsibility. So they wouldn't necessarily have, as a commission, in that case a committee, a point of view or something that they've worked on, they want to report, or some other contribution that they could make to the general discussion. So
All right,
that was one
I'm
of the
not-
things that
okay,
I discovered.
I did
at
not
this meeting.
identify sustainability, but they certainly can be involved in it. We need to know we have to, the end goal of this is a housing growth plan. That's what the end result of, really, of what we were formed under 25-1, is the end of it is a housing growth plan. So at this point, I mean, I'll do what the commission want to do. I want to gather information, and I want to find out what the other committees. So I don't care if sustainability, if they're not concerned about 8-30G, then they're going down the wrong path, because you want to, if you want to be sustainable, and somebody's going to come in and do an 8-30G, you want to be able to work with that developer to make the project sustainable.
So we have to help them understand how to work with the
I mean,
developer.
we talked
That's
about
another
zero,
thing we
we
can do.
talked about zero growth, you know, not zero growth,
Yeah, energy.
net energy. In the town that borders us,
Well, there's
in
always
the
these
town that
overlaps.
borders us, there's a regulation already drafted.
They all overlap, and it's a really good thing for everybody to have an opportunity to discuss common issues, but not all issues are common. Each one of us has a charge from the town that's distinct to us, and also, of course, we have, beginning with, 2021, we've had a lot of experience with the necessity of talking to the public and educating the public.
Right.
So we
Well,
can't wait.
we're gonna talk to the public. We're
We
gonna
don't
edu-
have any information for them about the housing growth plan yet, and we
Right.
won't for some months at least.
We're gonna be gathering information from the public. I just wanna gather information from the other, commissioners.
I made my point.
Yes, this communication is, it's important, but we're gonna have to come up with a document. We're gonna have to have a practical solution to this. And I think, one of the things that you said early on in the meeting was that you spoke to Jim Urbano about his apartments.
4 years ago, 5 years ago, yeah.
Well, whenever it was.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is, I think that should be a component of what we're doing, to go out, talk to the landlords, talk to the people who can possibly build units above their businesses, and see what the practicality of that is. How much interest would there be in that? So we can say, all right, we've spoken to 17 landlords, and we can develop 132, apartments. And I think we should concentrate on affordable apartments, because once these developers come in and they make all these market rate housing units, it increases the denominator, and it takes us farther away from our 10% goal.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and yes, we should be talking to
we have
them,
to
but you're
wear
not
our
gonna,
shoe
you're not
leather
gonna
to
get the
find out what's
landlords,
going on.
you're not gonna get the landlords to do 100%.
No, not 100%, but you
yeah.
get some.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
there's some.
can, if the landlord does it, then you could easily get 1 or 2 units out of the
Yeah.
landlords. The reality of it, and we had this discussion 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the reality of it, 10% is, to most towns, is not an achievable goal. Because the more you bring in mathematically, it becomes impossible.
That's why you have to concentrate on affordable units.
Yeah, but if you wanted to concentrate on 100% affordable, then you can do that, but you're, again, with 100% affordable, number one, do you have the demand for it? Number two, because you're talking about going down to the 30% AMI and others. So this is stuff we have to do. And this is stuff that we have to bring in, have John Gitkowski or D'Amato or somebody come in and discuss with us what the marketing base for it. Right now, we're talking about increasing housing stock, increasing the affordable. Those are the kind of issues that are in the housing demand, of just purely increasing the housing stock.
But that housing bill also talks about middle housing, it talks about duplexes
Right.
and triplexes.
Right. And those can be spread out amongst the residential areas. They're not going to be popular in the residential areas.
But we have them there now, we have them on Litchfield Turnpike.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about in the Residence A zones. And, they can be built, those duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes can be built on septic. And depending on the type of property. But I don't know, and certainly that may be one of our recommendations, but right now, we have the basics of the housing plan that was did in 2022. We have the basics that identified some parcels. Right now, as far as the issue of the downtown, the Planning and Zoning Commission has to draft a statute. 25-1, section 16 applies to the village district. It's a commercial district. It applies to it. So,
More than that.
huh?
More than that whole area down there, not just the village.
Well, yeah, yeah, right, you're right. The whole area down there, it applies to that. So we're gonna have to deal with that. We still need, in my opinion, we still need a little more info. What is planning and zoning doing? And like somebody said, maybe tomorrow night, we'll potentially find out some more. But I intend on telling Mika, okay, if you can't get together every commission, we need to have a joint meeting, at least with planning and zoning, and I believe with economic development. If Cooper and others don't want to, at least those three, we need to talk, because they're completely interrelated on this. Completely interrelated. We are not going to get a power plant like Oxford got a power plant. We don't have a Route 1 like Orange has, and we don't have Bridgeport Avenue like Shelton has. So how are we going to generate tax base?
So for your vision for what we're going to do for the rest of the year doesn't include any public presentations like we did last year?
That's not the case. The rest of the year, till of December, we may be very well having public forums and everything like that, but some of our public forums may be a joint public forum with one of the other boards.
That's what we're talking about with ADUs with conservation. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Well, ADUs, I certainly want to find out what's going to happen between now and May 6th. When the legislative session ends, is the Golden Girls going to be passed? Because now that's, first of all, even though we already have good statutes, that's still going to change the ability of more people to have ADUs.
Well, I hear you, but it takes a while to organize these things. By the time we get something organized, we will definitely know all of that, plus probably some other things. that come out of the
Right,
legislative
but I think
session.
the first thing to do, especially on it, is to meet with the planning and zoning, and we'll have a discussion, and
Well, they're busy. They're going to be pretty
I don't-
busy for the
yeah,
next
huh?
couple of months. I mean, they're not going to talk about ADUs in the next couple of months.
yes, they are, because if the statute passes, they have to do something. They may have to tweak their own regulations by October 1st.
By October
First,
1st.
yeah, right, yeah, there's a different time limit
Yeah.
on everything.
No, they are talking about ADUs as part of their opportunity housing development discussions. So that's really part of what they're doing right now, too.
Right,
And it's
yeah.
very much something that we should all be talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, and when it comes to a housing growth plan, ADUs are nice.
I know.
They're a
That's
drop in
why
the
we
bucket.
haven't done anything with.
They're a drop in the bucket. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I mean, and Amy made a good point. There's an awful lot of them out there that are illegal ADUs right now existing. So maybe her suggestion of doing a tax incentive or something like that, I don't think we can do it. We have to find out if we're statutorily authorized to do it, to do tax incentives. That's something we can look at, but we're on we want to get a public forum, we want to do it, but I want to talk. My feeling is, and I will talk to Mika and say, I want to meet with the towns, the boards and commissions, and get some input from them. I'd love to bring John Gutkowski to one of our meetings to discuss and everything, get some input from them and find out where we're going. And then we have, people argue whether summertime is the best time in the world to have public meetings. People are on vacation, or is it in the fall? Is it more likely in the fall that you would want to have public meetings?
After school starts,
I have to admit, I missed our April 30th, July 30th meeting, because I was out of town, so it happens, it hurts me out.
But anyway,
We
let's,
have to
we
wind
have
up.
to
I have to wind up.
yeah. But anyway, well, that really finishes off the, as to what topics and everything like that. So number one, I'll reach out to the first selectman and try to set something up, and I'll also reach out to the planning group, and see if, we can work something out either with both of them and everything, so that we would be able to get together. I'll try to figure out how to listen to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at some point. If they're meeting tomorrow night, I'll be in Derby and listen to what they are going to do. with, if
I mean,
they're
that
doing.
actually raises another point I'm gonna make, and it'll take one microsecond. Honestly, and Kathy was talking about, reporting to TPC, having a direct connection in that way. And I think conservation has organized something that we might consider, and that's that each individual takes a commission that's relevant and reports on their interim meeting, the interim meeting of that commission to the whole commission. So we don't all have to watch all of those videos or attend all of those meetings. And if there's anything that's relevant, that we learn about that. So I think we might want to
Very good.
consider that for next time.
That's a
maybe.
great idea.
Yeah, that's a great
Consider
idea.
I
that.
watched
That's a
the
great.
economic development, that was a very interesting
Very
meeting, so
interesting.
yeah, we kind of have
Conservation
to
is always,
spread that around, so.
yeah, so we might want to think about what meetings we regularly like to listen to, when there's somebody who's on them or something, so that we can.
Well, I'll try to, I mean,
Information.
it should be easy, just make a list of when the meetings are, what, you know, when our meeting is, when their meetings are, and how the
Point
meetings
people to
interrelate.
listen
Yeah,
and
we could do
report.
something
Yeah.
like that Elaine is doing with.
That one.
Yeah. Okay?
Okay, I move that we
Second.
adjourn.
So adjourned.